Hello everybody, today I want to show you one of the many uses of the file object function in Clip Studio Paint. I'm going to make this animation of a river in a lazy man way. The idea for this tutorial came to me several months before when I saw this tutorial of Olaf Storm. It is a beautiful animation, but it used Cinema 4D and my 3D level is close to zero. So I started thinking about how to achieve a similar result with no 3D requirements. This is my animation. Same kind of view, but no 3D software required. If you're interested in how I did it, let's begin the tutorial. To start, I will explain what a file object is. The basic thing it does is to refer a .clip file in another file. If the reference file is added, it will update the new file. For example, I'm going to save this file and I'm going to call it painting. Now, in a new file, I can import this file by going to File, Import, Create File Object. And I can transform this in this way. I can edit this to make it different like this and save the changes. Coming back to the previous artwork, the file will update. If it doesn't update automatically, you can right-click over the file and click File Object and Update File Object. So, this is the power of the File Object function. And this can also be done with animation files. So, let's see how it's done in the river example. This file has the basic structure I use for the animation of the beginning. It has the landscape, a mask for the river, a rock in the foreground. I have the extra folder of a random girl just because the scene looks too empty and I want to practice hair in the wind. So, to create the illusion of this river flowing, we need specular lighting. So, in animation, there is a texture used to create this effect. This is an example of the kind of texture I'm talking about. You can create it yourself or use one from the asset store. There are free options like this one, for example, or this other one that looks quite nice. So you can simply download these textures and use it directly. The important thing is that if you create your own texture, it needs to be a seamless texture. That means that it can grow indefinitely. This is the way you can save one made by yourself. It's just going to edit, register material, image. There you can name your texture, check tiling is very important, and save in a folder where you can find it later. For example, I have a folder in color patterns called seamless texture. Then simply OK, and you have your own texture now. We're now going to create the river waves in this new file. The file needs to be big enough to cover the entire mask of the river. For example, this size is enough. So in the material panel, find the ripples for the river or the specular, whatever you want to call it. This is the one I'm going to use. To see better, let's change the paper color. Now change the scale of the texture to accommodate the scale of the river. If you don't see the timeline, it can be activated in Windows Timeline. Create a new timeline. In my case, I want a 2-second loop. So I'm going to work at 30 frames per second and 60 frame length. Now we can animate this river. First, we need to activate the grid. This can be done in View and click Grid, and adjust the texture to a reference line like this one, and you can refine the scale until it matches. Remember to enable the Snap to Grid. This way it will be easier. Now we can click Enable Keyframes to activate this layer animation feature, and let's change the interpolation to linear. Right click over here and add the first keyframe. Now in the last frame, with the operation tool, we can move the texture. You can move it with the cursor, or you can use the arrows in the keyboard. Let's move the texture until you reach the end. When the texture is here, it means that it will repeat indefinitely. But now, the first and the last frame will be the same. So to avoid this, let's move the last keyframe to the frame after. Now the loop is perfect. We can integrate this result in the main file. But first, let's check the animation. Okay, so now I need to save this file. Let's bring the file in File, Import Created File Object, and using the Distort tool, it can be found in Edit, Transform, Distort. We can change the perspective of the water to match the one of the river. We can change it like this, maybe here. You can change the file until you are satisfied with the result. Remember, you need to be in the first frame when you import the file, or you will get this. But this is easy to fix. Just drag the animation until it is in the first frame. Now we can test the animation. And it looks horrible. This is because it has no movement, so it looks like glass. Let's stop this horrible thing. There is no problem. We can fix the animation. It just needs more movement. So in our previous file, we can use a filter to create this extra animation. But there is a problem. We can't do this in this file because it is an animated layer. So if we make a change, it will make the change in the layer, but the effect will not change over time. So we need to convert the layer to an image sequence. To do this, first I will create a new animation folder, then a new animation cell. Go to frame 3 and press new cell. Now, new cell until you get to 3D cells. This will make an animation in 2s, and that is enough for the speed of this water. Now select the layer of the ripples and make it a reference layer. Using the magic wand, the auto select tool, how it's called in Clip, go to the first frame of the animation layer and select the white part like this. Use similar settings like this one, like unselect close gap. This is really important. Tolerance can be whatever. Area scaling can be between 3 or 4. Finally, it's really important to select the reference layer, this little icon, the lighthouse. Select the white part of the specular light and press Fill with a white color. Now, if we make this layer invisible, we can see the result. I automated this part of the process with an auto action, which fills the color, deselect the mask, and go to the next frame. This auto action and another one I'm going to use in this project is going to be shared for free, and you can find the files in the video description. This action doesn't do the whole process automatically because one must select the area, but it speeds the process a great deal. We can hide the water ripples layer and check the animation. Now the sequence is ready, and for the next part we are going to deform these images using the distort filter. The one I find works the best is a zigzag filter. You can find it in Filter, Distort, Zigzag. What I find out is that the angle at 90 keeps the waves affecting just up and down. So this is a fixed number. And the number of waves is just how many waves there are in the illustration. So I'm not going to change this number. And the wave height is the one I'm going to vary. And it will vary between 1.4 to 3.4. I test these several times, and these numbers were the ones I liked better. But if you keep the change constant, or in animation called linear, the back and forth movement is very abrupt and it looks quite bad. So what I did was to accelerate and decelerate the movements. I make it an ease in and ease out movement to make the transition smoother. The values start changing every 0.05, then 0.1, and finally every 0.2 units. The result is an ease in and ease out movement. The auto action does the 30 frames in one click. So this is how it looks. Now we can erase this paper layer and we can erase the keyframe layer and save the file. If we go to the main file, right click over the file and click File Object, Update File Object. And this is how it looks. It looks a lot better. I asked my 8-year-old daughter how it looks, and she says it looked quite stiff and she didn't like it a lot. But I feel that it's good enough for a establishing shot, and you can save a lot of time because you don't need to move by hand all these ripples. But there is another problem here, and it's the interaction with the rock in the foreground. We can make an animation that reflects this obstacle in the water, and it will be a small animation, but it will make a big difference. What I did was to erase using a mask with the blur and create a new mask for the animation. And what I did was to start drawing the ripples in this area. And this is the final result. It's an extra animation, but not too hard. And I create these shadows moving in the borders of the water. And that's it. It's not too hard, and it's quite fast. I think this can be useful, especially what I said for establishing shots, because you need to show how the environment is, and it needs to be like 2 seconds of animation, and you can do this animation in maybe less than a day, depending on how fast you can draw a background. And I hope this is something you find interesting, and if you can use it, it's amazing. I want to tell you guys that I am very grateful to my subscribers. At this point there are almost 400. That make me really happy because I can share these ideas with more people. Thank you guys for real, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.